A little girl clung to her baby sister, tears streaming down her face as she begged, "Please don't take her, I'm strong, I can take care of her." A billionaire watching nearby stepped forward, unaware the girls were the daughters of the woman he once loved, and walked away from. Before we begin, leave a comment below and let us know where you are watching from so we can say hello. Now, let's get into the story. Rain soaked the streets of downtown Chicago, turning gutters into miniature rivers and umbrellas into fragile shields. In the gray blur of the downpour, a heartbreaking scene unfolded at the edge of Lincoln Square. People passing by slowed their steps, drawn not by curiosity but by something raw and painful in the air, a little girl's cries. 9-year-old Harper Lane stood in the middle of the sidewalk, her small body trembling, soaked through. She wasn't crying for herself. She was crying for her baby sister. In her arms, she clutched 3-year-old Lily, who was too confused and scared to even understand what was happening. A social worker in a government-issued raincoat stood over them, gently but firmly trying to separate the girls. "Please don't take her." Harper's voice cracked through the rain, her wet hair plastered to her face. "I can take care of her. I am strong." Her tiny fingers dug into Lily's coat as if letting go meant the end of everything. Her body, though small, was taut with the strength of desperation. Every ounce of courage she had left was wrapped around that plea. The social worker knelt, her expression a blend of sympathy and professionalism. "Harper, I know this is hard. But we just want to make sure Lily is safe. You can't take care of her all by yourself." Harper's tears mixed with rain. "But I have. I've been taking care of her ever since Mom got sick. I make her cereal, I help her with the potty, I tell her stories before bed. I can do it." The small crowd that had gathered was silent, umbrellas hovering over their heads like halos of helplessness. Some turned away, unable to watch. Others wiped their eyes, moved by the defiance in the little girl's voice. It wasn't just sadness, it was love at its most fearless. From across the street, a man in a navy coat stood under a black umbrella, unmoving. His expression was unreadable, but his eyes didn't leave the children. Cole Maddox, one of the wealthiest investors in the Midwest, had come to this street corner for a site inspection. But now, his world was narrowing to the scene in front of him. Something deep in his chest stirred. He didn't understand it yet, but he couldn't look away. Meanwhile, Harper was on her knees now, shielding Lily from the world. The toddler whimpered and clung to her sister's neck, confused by the strange woman, the attention, the way her sister shook but refused to let go. Lightning flashed overhead, and thunder cracked like a verdict in the sky. "I promised Mommy I'd keep her safe," Harper cried. "You can't take her. You can't." And just then, something shifted. Not in the air, not in the sky, but in the heart of the man across the street, whose past was about to crash into his present in the most unexpected way. From behind the tinted window of his sleek black SUV, Cole Maddox sat in silence, his fingers curled tightly around a leather portfolio that he hadn't opened. The street outside bustled with the usual rhythm of late afternoon traffic in downtown Chicago, honking cars, the hiss of bus brakes, the distant chatter of pedestrians. But none of that mattered to Cole at the moment. His gaze was fixed on the small drama unfolding across the street. He hadn't meant to stop. His visit to this part of the city was purely routine, a brief site check on a new luxury development he was funding. In his world, everything moved fast: land deals, board meetings, negotiations. He hadn't expected anything here to hold his attention longer than 10 minutes. And yet, as his driver eased the car to a temporary stop outside the planned site, Cole had caught something out of the corner of his eye. Something haunting. There, in the rain, stood a little girl no older than 9, soaked from head to toe, clutching a toddler in her arms. The older girl's hair was matted to her forehead, her clothes several sizes too big and clinging to her frame. She stood between a woman in a dark raincoat, likely a social worker, and a marked city vehicle. Her voice didn't reach the SUV, but her body language was clear. She was pleading. Desperately. Cole leaned forward, resting his forearms on his knees, his expression suddenly tight. "What's going on there?" he murmured to no one in particular. The driver said nothing, sensing the shift in his boss's mood. Cole couldn't tear his eyes away. The girl's arms wrapped protectively around the smaller child, who buried her face in her sister's neck. Cole's chest tightened. He couldn't hear her, but he could see the way her lips trembled, the way she stamped her foot and shook her head fiercely. "Please don't take her," he imagined the words forming. "I can take care of her. I'm strong." Something about the scene pried open a door he thought he had sealed years ago. A familiar ache stirred in his gut, a memory just out of reach. He narrowed his eyes at the older girl, taking in her narrow face, her eyes wide with determination and fear. There was something about her. Something that made the air feel heavier in the SUV. Cole sat back, breath catching in his throat. He reached slowly into the inner pocket of his tailored coat and pulled out a small, weathered photo. A woman smiled back at him from the picture, soft eyes, windswept hair. Natalie Reed. A name he hadn't spoken aloud in 15 years. But then, his eyes locked on the smaller girl's face. Even through the fog and water-streaked glass, her features cut through him like a blade. A flood of recognition surged in his chest, hot and cold all at once. The child had a mess of soft, honey-brown curls that clung to her wet cheeks, and when she lifted her head slightly to glance toward the crowd, Cole saw them, the dimples. Those dimples. He hadn't seen them in over a decade, but he knew them. Because once, he had kissed them. The resemblance hit him so hard he drew in a sharp breath. His driver glanced at him in the rearview mirror, but Cole waved him off with a barely visible shake of the head. His heart was pounding. He couldn't look away from that little girl. Not because she was any ordinary child. But because she looked exactly like Natalie. Natalie Reed. The name flared up in his mind like a long-extinguished flame suddenly reignited. Natalie, his first real love. The woman he had left behind in Milwaukee all those years ago when he chose the fast lane in New York over love. He'd told himself she would be fine, that she'd move on. She hadn't wanted the life he wanted, or so he thought. They never said goodbye properly. Just faded into silence. But this child, this girl, she had Natalie's smile. Natalie's curls. And Natalie's fire in her eyes, even through the tears. Cole swallowed hard, a lump forming in his throat. No, he whispered to himself. It can't be. And yet, deep inside, he already knew. That child was no stranger. She was blood. She was family. And she was in danger of being taken from the only person left who loved her, her sister. The past wasn't done with him. Rain drizzled steadily over the cracked sidewalk, forming shallow puddles that mirrored the bleakness in Harper Lane's eyes. She stood shivering in her worn sneakers, drenched from the downpour, clutching her baby sister Lily against her chest as if the strength of her arms alone could shield them from the world. Her tangled brown hair clung to her cheeks, but she didn't seem to notice. All she could see was the woman in the navy coat before her, Ms. Bennett, the social worker, reaching forward, clipboard tucked under one arm, voice calm but immovable. "I'm sorry, Harper," Ms. Bennett said gently, though her expression was firm. "You're just a child. This isn't safe. We need to take Lily somewhere stable." "No!" Harper cried, backing away, her arms tightening protectively around the 3-year-old who whimpered softly against her shoulder. "I can take care of her. I'm strong. Please, don't take her away from me." Ms. Bennett sighed and crouched to Harper's level, rain soaking the knees of her slacks. "I know you love your sister," she said quietly. "I can see that. But love isn't always enough to keep someone safe. You don't have a home, no adult to help you, no food." Harper's voice cracked. "I'll figure it out. I've been figuring it out since Mom got sick. I read her stories. I feed her from the little I can get. Please, we only have each other. The crowd gathering under dripping umbrellas was growing. A woman gasped softly. A man muttered, "She's just a kid." Strangers stood frozen, touched and helpless as they watched the fragile girl make an impossible stand against the system. Lily stirred, lifting her head from Harper's shoulder. "Harper," she murmured, thumb in mouth. Harper leaned in and kissed her forehead. "It's okay, I've got you." Ms. Bennet's resolve faltered, but only for a moment. "Harper, this is not about punishment. It's about protection. We have rules. It's my job to make sure Lily is safe." Tears spilled down Harper's cheeks, mixing with the rain. She sank to her knees, still holding Lily, shaking her head in disbelief. "But I am keeping her safe," she whispered. "She's all I have left." For a heartbeat, everything was silent, just the sound of rain hitting asphalt, and a little girl's quiet sobs. Then, across the street, a black SUV door clicked open. Someone had been watching. Someone whose life was about to change forever. Cole Maddox had never been one to act impulsively. His life revolved around strategic decisions, quarterly returns, and carefully measured steps. But at that moment, watching a child cry in the middle of the street while gripping her baby sister like her life depended on it, something inside him shifted. He opened the door of his black SUV, rain immediately lashing at his tailored coat. Without hesitation, he grabbed the umbrella from the passenger seat and stepped out into the downpour. His Italian leather shoes splashed through puddles as he crossed the street with purposeful strides. His eyes were fixed on the two girls, the older one trembling as she held her sister tight, refusing to let go. Cole's heart clenched. The younger girl, Lily, was too quiet. Her cheeks were blotchy, her little hands clutching a stuffed animal that had seen better days. She didn't cry, she just stared up at her sister with the kind of innocent trust that broke something deep inside him. "Wait," Cole said, stepping closer. Everyone turned. His voice wasn't loud, but it carried weight. His tall frame, impeccable suit, and commanding presence made people instinctively pause. Harper blinked through tears, startled by the stranger with kind eyes and a steady voice. The social worker gave him a wary glance. "Sir, this is a sensitive situation. Please stand back." Cole held out his hand, his umbrella dripping. "I don't mean to interfere," he said carefully. "But, is there any other option? Perhaps I can help." Ms. Bennet furrowed her brow. "Are you related to the girls?" He hesitated for a split second. "No. Not directly. But I'd like to know more before you take them away from each other." Harper's gaze locked on his face, searching. There was something in her expression, a desperate hope fighting its way through heartbreak. "Are you here to help us?" she asked, voice shaking. Cole looked down at her, then at the frightened little girl clinging to her. "I'd like to try." The social worker looked from Cole to the girls, uncertainty written all over her face. "Sir, I need to know who you are and what your interest is in this case." Cole reached into his pocket and handed her a card. She glanced at it, eyes widening. "Cole Maddox," she read aloud. "The investor?" He nodded once. "Yes." Ms. Bennet's voice softened, confusion replacing her stern tone. I didn't realize." He cut her off gently. "You were just doing your job. I'm not here to interfere. I just saw what happened. And I'd like to help if I can." From her spot beside the social worker, Harper stared up at him. Her tear-filled eyes searched his face, unsure, cautious, but undeniably drawn to something in him. He crouched down slowly, keeping a respectful distance, his expression shifting from businesslike composure to something far more human. "What's your name?" he asked softly. "Harper," she whispered, her voice barely audible. "That's a beautiful name," he said, offering the smallest smile. "And your sister?" Lily. She's lucky to have you, he said, his voice thick with something he couldn't quite hide. Regret? Recognition? Ms. Bennet observed the exchange, her professional instincts at war with something she couldn't explain. Harper's hands tightened around the edge of her worn coat. Are you gonna take her too? The question hit him like a punch to the chest. Cole swallowed hard. No, sweetheart. I'm not here to take anyone. I just want to make sure you're both safe. That's all. Harper's eyes stayed locked on his. She didn't fully understand what was happening, but a sliver of hope, fragile, flickering, began to form. For the first time in days, she didn't feel alone. And for the first time in years, Cole Maddox felt the undeniable pull of something more powerful than success or wealth, responsibility, and a bond he never expected to find on a rainy street in Chicago. Back at the hotel, Cole Maddox stood by the floor-to-ceiling window of his luxury suite, staring out over the city lights of Chicago. The rain still whispered against the glass, matching the ache in his chest. But it wasn't the weather or the deals he'd flown in to negotiate that held his mind captive, it was the haunting image of that little girl sobbing on the sidewalk. Harper. He'd only heard her voice once, strained and cracking as she pleaded with the social worker not to take her sister. I'm strong. I can take care of her, she'd said. That sentence looped in his mind like a song he couldn't shut off. He'd seen desperation before, in boardroom negotiations, in the eyes of men who lost fortunes overnight. But never like that. Never in a child. He crossed the room, opened the small leather wallet he'd carried for years, and pulled out a photograph. It was worn, the edges curled, the ink slightly faded. Still, her smile shone through. Natalie Reed, the only woman who had ever made him question the direction of his life. She had been the heartbeat of his early 20s, fierce, beautiful, grounded in ways he never was. And then he'd left her. A decision cloaked in ambition and justified by timing, but deep down, he always knew, it was fear. Now, looking at that photo and remembering Harper's face, the air seemed to grow heavier. Harper's eyes were Natalie's. Wide, expressive, always scanning the world like it was hiding secrets. And the little one, Lily, he barely got a good look at her, but something in her curls, the soft roundness of her cheeks, it all stirred memories he thought had long since been buried. He sank into the chair near the minibar, still holding the photo, elbows resting on his knees. Is it possible, he whispered to himself. Could they be his? But the question wasn't one he could answer. Not tonight. Not with only fragments of a past he had tried to forget and two children whose lives were already tangled in tragedy. Natalie had never reached out to him. She had every reason not to. And he, blinded by ambition, had never looked back. Cole shut his eyes and leaned back, letting the truth settle on him like a weight he hadn't earned the strength to carry. If Harper and Lily were his daughters, what kind of man had he been to not know? What kind of man could he become to make up for it? The rain tapped steadily at the glass. Somewhere across the city, two little girls were sleeping in an unfamiliar shelter, hearts broken, futures uncertain. And Cole Maddox, a man with power, wealth, and everything he thought mattered, realized for the first time in years, he had no idea what truly did. And no answer to the question echoing inside him, why did I leave her? The next morning, Cole Maddox found himself standing outside the Illinois Department of Child Services, his jaw tight and heart racing. The cold wind cut through his coat, but he barely noticed it. He hadn't slept much. Something about the little girl's face, Harper, had burrowed into his mind like a forgotten melody. The resemblance to Natalie had shaken him, and he needed answers. He gave his name at the front desk and was ushered into a small, sterile office. The caseworker, a middle-aged woman named Cheryl, offered him a seat and a puzzled look. Mr. Maddox, I'm not sure what this is about. Are you a relative of the Lane children? I'm not sure, he replied, his voice low, almost uncertain. But I think I might be. I'd like to see their case file. I understand you can't give everything to a stranger, but if there's a connection. I need to know. Cheryl eyed him for a moment. The name Maddox was familiar. He was the billionaire investor whose name came up in finance news almost weekly, but his voice wasn't polished. It was raw. Vulnerable. After a long pause, she nodded slowly. Give me a moment. When she returned, she handed him a thin manila folder. His hands trembled slightly as he opened it. 2 photographs were clipped to the top, Harper and Lily Lane. Just below them, typed in black ink, was the name of the mother. Natalie Reed. Cole's breath caught in his throat. For a moment, the room spun. He clutched the folder tighter, trying to steady himself. Natalie. He hadn't spoken that name in years, hadn't dared to let himself think of her too long. They'd fallen in love when he was just 29, full of ambition, building his first fund. She was 22, gentle, wise beyond her years, with a quiet fire he admired. He had asked her to come with him to New York when his career took off. She refused. Her life was rooted in Chicago, her family, her dreams. So he left. And now, 15 years later, he was reading her name in a government file beneath a list of emergency contacts and medical records. She had been living in this city the entire time. And she'd had children. His children. The thought hit him like a blow to the chest. Is she still alive? He asked quietly. Cheryl shook her head, her expression softening. She passed away 2 weeks ago. She had stomach cancer. She had no listed next of kin. No known father for the children. Cole blinked, trying to process the sudden ache rising in his chest. He stared at Harper's photo again. Now it made sense, the tilt of her chin, the shape of her eyes, it was Natalie. It was his daughter. She never told him. Natalie had carried the weight of a pregnancy alone, given birth to not 1, but 2 daughters, Harper and Lily, and raised them in silence. Not a phone call. Not a letter. Not even a whisper through the grapevine that she was in trouble or needed help. She had simply vanished from his world, leaving behind only the echoes of what might have been. She never reached out? Cole asked, his voice raw, almost hoarse. The caseworker, Miss Cheryl, shook her head gently. Not once. According to neighbors and school records, she kept to herself. Worked 2 jobs, waitressing at a diner during the day and cleaning offices at night. No extended family. No close friends. Just her and the girls. Cole exhaled slowly, a hand coming up to rub the back of his neck. 2 jobs. No support system. And she had still kept Harper and Lily safe. Federal clothed. Loved. While he had built empires, hosted galas, flown private jets, Natalie had been folding laundry at midnight and scraping by to make sure their daughters didn't go to bed hungry. The grief that surged through him now wasn't simple sadness. It was guilt. Shame. The kind that grips you by the throat and doesn't let go. He had left her. He had chosen ambition over love, thinking she'd move on, maybe find someone else, someone better. But she hadn't. She had simply fought, every day, alone, for the sake of the children he hadn't known existed. There was a photograph tucked inside the report, a candid one. Natalie holding Lily as a baby, Harper by her side, no makeup, hair in a loose bun, a soft smile on her tired face. That picture was more powerful than any business deal Cole had ever signed. It was proof of a life lived in sacrifice, in silence, and in love. A life she kept hidden, Cole murmured, holding the photo tightly. And for the first time in years, the man who thought he had everything felt utterly and completely hollow. He stood abruptly, his voice shaky. I need to help them. They can't go through this alone. Cheryl studied him again, her expression unreadable. If you are who you say you are, Mr. Maddox, then you've got a long road ahead of you. Cole nodded, his voice no more than a whisper. I already lost Natalie. I won't lose them too. The hotel suite was silent except for the ticking of an ornate clock on the wall, a sound that somehow made the room feel even more hollow. Cole Maddox sat on the edge of the couch, staring at a worn photograph in his hand, Natalie Reed, her soft eyes and gentle smile frozen in time. His thumb traced the edge of the picture as if he could somehow reach through it and undo everything he had failed to do. But there was no going back. She was gone. And he had missed everything. Cole had spent his life chasing power, making headlines for billion-dollar deals and ruthless takeovers. People called him brilliant, unstoppable. But none of that mattered now, not when two little girls who should have grown up with warmth, security, and a father's love were instead facing separation and uncertainty. Girls who, unbelievably, were his daughters. He stood up abruptly and walked to the window, pulling back the curtain. The city below sparkled, oblivious to the storm churning in his chest. He pressed a hand against the cool glass, jaw tight. How could he have not known? How could Natalie have carried that burden alone? The file from Child Services confirmed what his gut already knew: Harper and Lily were his. Natalie had listed no father. She never reached out. And still, he had no right to be angry. He was the one who left her all those years ago, choosing a penthouse in Manhattan over a future in Chicago with the only woman who had ever made him feel human. He sank back into the couch, head in his hands. The memory of Harper's tearful voice echoed in his mind, "Please don't take her. I'm strong. I can take care of her." She had fought harder to keep her little sister than most adults would. That kind of strength didn't come from nowhere, it was born out of desperation, out of the crushing weight of loss and fear. And she was only 9. Cole's throat tightened. He had the means to change everything now. Lawyers, influence, money, all of it was within reach. But what terrified him most was that none of it guaranteed redemption. He had already missed their first steps, their birthdays, their scraped knees and nighttime cries. He couldn't erase that. But maybe he could stop it from getting worse. Maybe he could fight to keep them together, to be the father they had never known but so clearly needed. He could almost hear Natalie's voice, soft and steady, reminding him of who he used to be before the boardrooms and the ambition dulled his heart. She would have begged him to stay. Now he would have to beg for the chance to make it right. He picked up his phone and dialed his lawyer. "I want emergency custody," he said, voice low but firm. "I won't let them be separated." Because guilt alone wasn't enough. Action had to follow. And for the first time in years, Cole Maddox wasn't thinking about profit, he was thinking about family. Harper Lane, just 9 years old, sat stiffly beside the social worker in the back seat, her arms wrapped tightly around 3-year-old Lily. The toddler had finally stopped crying, her thumb in her mouth, but Harper could feel the way her little chest still hiccuped from the earlier sobs. Rain streaked down the windows as the city blurred past them, the gray skyline melting into a kind of numbness that mirrored what Harper felt inside. She hadn't said a word since they left the sidewalk. Not when the kind man, Mr. Cole, she thought his name was, tried to speak to her. Not when the woman in the navy jacket, the one who kept calling herself Miss Bennett, gently pried her away from the park bench. And not even when they had taken Lily from her arms just to strap her into the van. Harper had just clung harder, refusing to let go until they promised she could hold her again. She didn't trust them. Not any of them. The van finally pulled up to a low brick building tucked between 2 warehouses. A small, peeling sign near the door read, "Bridgeview Transitional Youth Shelter." It didn't look like a home. It looked like somewhere people went when no one else wanted them. "This is just temporary, sweetheart," Miss Bennett said softly, unlocking Harper's seatbelt. "Just until we figure things out." Harper didn't respond. She slid out of the seat and adjusted Lily in her arms, the toddler's face now buried in Harper's shoulder. They were both soaked, Rainwater had seeped into their shoes and their hair clung to their faces. The front door opened automatically, and a woman in a yellow sweater and name badge greeted them. "You must be Harper and Lily," she said with a warm smile. "Come inside. Let's get you dried off." Inside, the walls were painted a dull beige, and the hallway smelled faintly of bleach and something Harper couldn't name, something tired and sad. They were led past a common room where a few kids sat watching a flickering TV. No one looked up. A door buzzed open at the end of the hallway, and they entered a small dorm room with 2 twin beds, a metal dresser, and one window with thick curtains drawn. Harper sat down on one of the beds, still holding Lily. She didn't put her down, even when a staff member brought them dry clothes and a plastic bag with a hairbrush, a toothbrush, and 2 juice boxes. "Do you want me to help you change your sister?" the staff member asked gently. Harper shook her head. "I can do it." Her voice was quiet, hoarse from crying earlier, but firm. She gently laid Lily down, undressing her with practiced care. She had been doing this for months now, bathing Lily, feeding her, singing her to sleep, ever since their mother got sick enough that she couldn't get out of bed some mornings. And now she was gone. The thought pushed into her chest like a blade. Her throat tightened, but she refused to cry again. She had to stay strong. For Lily. After changing, Harper tucked Lily under the blanket and sat beside her on the bed. She brushed Lily's hair back and whispered, "Mommy's gonna come back soon, okay? Just sleep now." Lily looked up at her with big watery eyes. "Harper, where Mommy?" Harper hesitated. The adults hadn't told her much. Just that their mother passed away. But Harper wasn't ready to believe it. Not yet. Not when her voice still echoed in Harper's mind. Not when her scent still clung to Lily's clothes. "She's just not here yet," Harper whispered. "But I'm here. I promise." That night, dinner was served in the cafeteria, but Harper barely touched the food. She sat at the end of a long table with Lily on her lap, picking at cold mac and cheese while other kids laughed and talked around them. A few older girls stared, and one of them whispered something that made the others giggle, but Harper didn't react. She didn't care what they said. She just wanted to go home. Except there was no home anymore. Back in their room, Harper curled up beside Lily. She didn't ask for anything, not a story, not a nightlight. She just pulled the blanket up and stared at the ceiling. The sounds of the shelter seeped in through the walls, footsteps, coughing, a television too loud, a baby crying down the hall. She turned her face into the pillow and let the silence swallow her. At midnight, Lily whimpered and reached for her. Harper scooted closer and pulled her baby sister into her arms. "It's okay," she whispered again, more to herself this time than to Lily. "We're gonna be okay." But the words felt empty. She didn't know what was coming next. She didn't know where that man, Mr. Cole, had gone, or why he looked at her like he knew her. She didn't know if the court would separate her and Lily. That was her biggest fear. She couldn't protect her mother. She couldn't stop the sickness. But she would fight with everything she had to keep Lily by her side. Because Lily was all she had left. And as she finally drifted into a restless sleep, one last thought clung to her heart like a prayer. Please, don't let them take her away. Cole Maddox had closed some of the largest investment deals in the country, mergers that took months of strategic warfare, hostile takeovers that left billion-dollar corporations trembling. But nothing had prepared him for the courtroom battle over 2 little girls who had unknowingly claimed his heart. It began with a single call to the most renowned family law attorney in Illinois, Margaret Ellison. Sharp-eyed and silver-haired, she'd been known to dismantle even the most complex custody cases. When she met with Cole in his corner office, she listened intently as he stumbled through his explanation, pausing too often, guilt slipping through the cracks of his voice. "They're my daughters," he said quietly, clutching the birth certificates he had requested from Child Services, along with the DNA test paperwork he hadn't been able to stop staring at for days. Margaret pursed her lips, tapping a pen against her legal pad. "You're the biological father, yes. But Mr. Maddox, you've never been in their lives. Not a single birthday. No records of support. That's going to raise red flags with the court." "I didn't know," he whispered. "I didn't know Natalie had children. She never told me. And now his voice cracked. "She's gone." Margaret saw it, the cracks in his stoic armor. He wasn't just trying to save face or avoid public scandal. This wasn't about image. It was about regret. About love he'd long buried, and the family he never realized he had until it was almost too late. Still, court didn't care about feelings. The law cared about timelines, documents, suitability. And the state of Illinois had its own ideas about what was, in the best interest of the child. They filed for emergency custody first, to keep Harper and Lily from being placed in separate foster homes while the case was reviewed. Cole moved quickly, turning one of his penthouse suites into a child-friendly residence overnight. He brought in child psychologists, teachers, pediatricians. But it wasn't enough to erase his absence from the past 9 years. In the first hearing, Cole sat stiffly at the front of the courtroom, flanked by Margaret and 2 junior attorneys. Across the aisle, the representative from Child Protective Services, Ms. Nora Sandridge, shuffled her papers, occasionally eyeing him with quiet skepticism. "Your Honor," she began, addressing the judge, "while Mr. Maddox is indeed the biological father, we must consider whether he is equipped, emotionally and practically, to raise 2 young girls, one of whom is still a toddler. Mr. Maddox has never been part of their lives. He didn't even know their names a month ago." Cole winced, each word cutting deeper than he expected. He had spent sleepless nights reading Harper's school reports, watching Lily sleep curled up on his sofa, memorizing their favorite meals and bedtime habits. But none of that showed up in court records. Ms. Sandridge continued, "The girls have suffered a recent trauma, the death of their mother. Stability is paramount. Can we trust that Mr. Maddox isn't reacting out of guilt or impulse? Can he provide emotional consistency for children who've known only hardship?" Cole stood. Against Margaret's whispered warning, he approached the judge directly. His voice was calm, but filled with something raw, truth. "I don't have a history with them," he admitted. "And I wish I did. I missed birthdays and first steps and bedtime stories. But not by choice. I didn't abandon them, I didn't even know they existed. And now that I do, I would give up everything, every dollar, every deal, to give them the life their mother tried to give on her own." He paused, his gaze fixed on the judge. "I may be new to this, but I'm not walking away. I will fight every day for them if you let me." There was a beat of silence in the room. Ms. Sandridge narrowed her eyes. "Intentions aside, does Mr. Maddox have the emotional capability to nurture 2 girls who've suffered loss? Or is he just a man used to getting what he wants?" The question lingered. The judge didn't respond immediately. Later that day, Cole sat in the hallway outside the courtroom, his tie loosened, hands folded together. His mind churned. For the first time in his adult life, his wealth felt useless. He couldn't write a check to fix this. He couldn't negotiate with childhood memories that never existed. Margaret sat beside him quietly. "We'll need character witnesses. Maybe someone who's seen you with the girls. Any connection that proves you're more than a bank account." "I've only just met them," he murmured. "I'm still learning who they are." "Then let them speak," she said softly. 2 weeks later, Harper was called to the stand. The courtroom was heavy with silence, the kind that clung to the skin and made every breath feel weighted. Cold fluorescent lights flickered overhead, and the oak-paneled walls seemed to close in around the people gathered inside. In the center, sitting on a worn wooden bench next to her guardian ad litem, was 9-year-old Harper Lane. She wore a simple navy dress, a size too big, with her hands folded tightly in her lap. Her light brown hair was pulled back into a neat ponytail, but her wide hazel eyes betrayed a storm of nerves. Next to her, Cole Maddox sat still, his expensive gray suit starkly contrasting the faded bench and somber setting. Despite being a billionaire investor who regularly stood before boardrooms of power and influence, today he felt like a stranger in his own skin. His hands trembled slightly as they rested on his knees, and his eyes remained locked on Harper, not with confidence, but with hope. Judge Karen Whitmore, a seasoned woman with silver-framed glasses and a mother's sharp intuition, adjusted her robe and looked over the custody case file. She had read through pages of legal arguments, DNA results, and character testimonies. Everything pointed to one truth: Cole was biologically the girl's father. But parenthood was never just about blood. She cleared her throat. Before I make any decisions, I understand one of the children has something they'd like to share. Harper stood slowly, knees wobbling slightly as she clutched a piece of folded paper with both hands. Her voice, though small, carried across the room with remarkable steadiness. I wrote a letter, she said, her eyes darting from the judge to Cole, then quickly away. Can I read it? Judge Whitmore nodded. Of course, dear. Take your time. Harper unfolded the letter carefully, her fingers brushing over creases she had smoothed out dozens of times that morning. She took a shaky breath and began. Dear Judge, she read aloud, her voice soft but growing stronger with each word. My name is Harper Lane. I'm 9 years old, and I know I'm just a kid, but I know when someone is kind. Mr. Cole is kind. She paused to glance up at the judge, then continued, blinking away the tears beginning to pool in her eyes. When my mommy died, it felt like the whole world got really dark and cold. I had to be brave for my baby sister, Lily. She's only 3 and she cries a lot at night. I hold her hand and tell her stories just like mommy did. But sometimes I get really scared too. Her voice cracked, and she pressed her lips together for a moment before going on. Then Mr. Cole came. He didn't yell or look angry. He sat with me on the shelter steps and just listened. Not many grown-ups listen to kids. But he did. And the next day, he brought Lily a teddy bear that smells like lavender, like mommy's pillows. And he brought me a book. It was Charlotte's Web, the same one mommy used to read to me before bed. He didn't know that, but he brought it anyway. Cole lowered his head, hiding the sudden sting in his eyes. His hands clenched tighter. Harper took a breath, then finished, I don't know if he's supposed to be our dad. But I think he is. Because he feels like home. The courtroom was utterly still. No movement. No coughs. Just silence, and the echo of a little girl's truth hanging in the air like music that refused to fade. Judge Whitmore leaned back in her chair, her expression unreadable. She looked at Harper for a long moment before shifting her eyes to Cole. Mr. Maddox, she said, do you wish to respond? Cole rose slowly, clearing his throat. Your Honor, there's nothing I could say that would carry the weight of that letter. I didn't know they existed until a few weeks ago. That's my failure. But the moment I saw them, I knew. Not because of DNA, but because of how much I wanted to protect them. His voice faltered, but he didn't stop. I may be late. But I'm not walking away. Harper turned toward him, just slightly, and gave a tiny nod, the kind that said everything without needing words. Judge Whitmore looked down at the paper again, then tapped it lightly with her pen. Harper, thank you for your honesty and your courage. That letter says more than any document in this file. She turned back to Cole. I will take your petition under serious advisement. For now, temporary custody will remain in place. But I'm strongly leaning toward a permanent placement with you, pending further assessments. Tears streamed down Harper's cheeks as she sat back down and reached for Cole's hand. For the first time since her mother's death, she allowed herself to hope. Not because a judge said so, but because she had spoken from her heart, and someone had listened. Cole squeezed her hand gently. No words were exchanged. None were needed. And across the courtroom, where justice and fate often collide, a new story quietly began. The city glowed beneath the heavy clouds as Cole Maddox's sleek black SUV pulled into the underground garage of his penthouse. The weight of the past few days pressed down on his shoulders like lead. He had closed deals worth billions, stood on stages in front of world leaders, and navigated financial chaos with ease. But nothing, not a single high-stakes negotiation, had prepared him for this, walking two small girls into his life, into his home, into his heart. Harper clutched her little sister's hand as they stepped out of the car. Her shoes, still damp from the earlier rain, squeaked against the polished floors. Lily, only 3 years old, blinked sleepily, her thumb in her mouth, the teddy bear Cole had brought her tucked securely under her arm. Cole led them into the private elevator. Silence filled the space, broken only by the soft hum of machinery and Lily's small sniffles. Harper's eyes scanned every corner cautiously. She was trying to be brave, he could see it in her set jaw, in the way she squared her shoulders even though her pink backpack looked like it weighed more than she did. When the elevator doors opened to the penthouse, bright lights illuminated a place that was once just a symbol of his success. Clean, minimalist lines. Cold marble floors. Gray and white furniture that had never seen a spill, a scuff, or a child's laugh. It wasn't a home. It was a monument to loneliness. Harper hesitated at the doorway. Cole noticed how her small fingers tightened around Lily's. "Is this your place?" she asked softly, like she wasn't sure if they were allowed to speak too loudly. Cole forced a smile and nodded. "Yes. It's ours now, if you want it to be." Harper's eyes widened slightly, but she didn't say anything. Lily tugged on her sister's hand, clearly unsure of what to do in this unfamiliar, echoing space. Her eyes locked on the floor-to-ceiling windows that revealed the sprawling city below, and she let out a nervous whimper. "I'll show you your room," Cole offered gently. But Harper didn't move. Instead, she looked up at him, really looked at him, for the first time since they'd left the courtroom. Her voice was barely more than a whisper. "Can Lily sleep in your room tonight? She gets scared. Especially when it's somewhere new." Cole's throat tightened. He hadn't planned for this. He thought maybe they'd want privacy, or at least time to adjust. But now, faced with that simple request, so innocent, so heavy, he felt something crack open inside him. He nodded, unable to speak past the lump rising in his throat. "Of course she can," he finally managed. "Both of you can, if you'd like." Harper looked relieved, but she didn't smile. She simply led Lily into the hallway. Cole followed, opening the door to his bedroom, normally pristine and untouched by anything resembling comfort. Tonight, it would be different. He moved quickly, awkwardly pulling back the comforter, removing the decorative pillows that had never been used. Harper crawled onto the bed beside Lily and sat upright while Lily instantly curled into the softness like it was the first real bed she'd had in weeks. Maybe it was. Cole reached into the closet and pulled out a throw blanket. He wasn't sure what else to do. "Do you want a night light?" he asked. Harper nodded. He walked to the bathroom, found the dimmest setting on the mirror light, and left the door cracked just enough to spill a soft glow across the hardwood floor. When he returned, Harper was lying beside Lily, one hand resting gently on her sister's back. Lily's eyes were already closed, breathing soft and even. Cole stood at the door, unsure if he should leave or stay. Before he could ask, Harper looked up at him. "You don't have to stay if you're busy," she said. "I know you probably have meetings and stuff." He shook his head. "Nothing more important than this." She hesitated, then said, "Mom used to sing to Lily when she couldn't sleep. But I'm not good at singing." Cole took a breath. He hadn't sung in years, probably not since childhood. But tonight wasn't about perfection. He sat at the edge of the bed and hummed something. He didn't even know what it was, just a soft, low melody, almost like a lullaby remembered from long ago. Harper's eyes slowly began to drift closed. Lily was already lost in dreams. He stayed there long after they'd both fallen asleep, watching them. So small. So fragile. And yet, they had survived more than most adults ever would. These weren't just two lost girls. They were his daughters. His blood. His second chance. As the rain tapped gently against the windows, Cole whispered into the stillness of the room, "You're safe now. I promise." And for the first time in years, Cole Maddox didn't feel alone. In the morning, everything changed. Cole's sleek marble kitchen, once untouched and pristine, was now an explosion of motion. Lily somehow found the sugar jar and dumped half of it onto the floor. Harper tried to mop it up with a paper towel roll. Cole stood in the doorway in his silk robe, stunned, watching as these two children, his children, turned his world of order into one of joyful chaos. For the first time in years, he laughed. But learning to be a father wasn't just about sugar spills or bedtime stories. It was about undoing decades of emotional distance. Cole had been raised by nannies, educated in boarding schools, and coached to be a CEO before he turned 25. He had never been taught how to hold a child through a nightmare, how to recognize the look of worry in a little girl's eyes, or how to braid someone's hair before school. So he learned. Slowly. On the second morning, Harper stood in the doorway to his office, holding a pink hairbrush and a ponytail band. "My mom used to do it this way," she said quietly, handing it to him. Cole hesitated. "I don't know how." "That's okay," Harper shrugged. "I can teach you." He knelt awkwardly behind her, fingers trembling as he followed her instructions. "Left over right. Loop through. Try again." She winced when he pulled too tight, but said nothing. When he finally got it, sloppy, but holding, she smiled at him. And that smile was worth more than any merger he had ever signed. Nights were harder. Lily didn't sleep well. She often whimpered for her mother in the middle of the night. The first time it happened, Cole rushed into her room, unsure of what to do. Harper was already there, rocking her sister gently. "You can sing to her," Harper whispered. "I don't know any lullabies," Cole admitted. "I can teach you that too." She hummed a tune, a soft, trembling melody that Natalie must have once sung. Cole picked it up, voice low, unsteady. Lily eventually calmed, her breathing evening out as her fingers curled around Cole's thumb. Every night after that, he sang the same song. And then there were the mornings where Lily insisted on pouring her own cereal, and missed. Or the days Harper didn't speak much at all, staring out the window, her eyes glassy with thoughts of her mother. On those days, Cole sat beside her and said nothing, just gently placed a hand on her back. Sometimes, silence was the best he could offer. But he was trying. Every moment, every small act. He started reading aloud every night, even when the words caught in his throat. Stories about brave girls and curious bears and magical gardens. Harper leaned against him, listening. Lily curled under his arm, thumb in her mouth. When he stumbled over a silly voice or made a mistake, they giggled. And every giggle chipped away at the walls he had spent years building around his heart. One evening, Harper brought him an old storybook from her mother's things. "This was her favorite," she said. "She used to read it to us when we were sick." Cole opened it slowly, hands trembling. Natalie's handwriting was still in the margins, tiny notes, hearts, smiley faces next to the characters' names. His voice shook as he read, but he didn't stop. He couldn't. Harper climbed into his lap without asking. Lily fell asleep halfway through, drooling on his shoulder. In those moments, Cole didn't feel like a billionaire. He felt like a father. The kind he never had. The kind he had always been afraid he could never be. As the weeks passed, his staff noticed changes. The house wasn't always spotless anymore. The pristine silence was often broken by giggles, by Lily's tiny voice calling, "Daddy, look," or Harper's exasperated, "You're doing it wrong," when he messed up another braid. And Cole didn't mind. He began to look forward to the chaos, the learning, the messes. He learned that being a father wasn't about knowing everything, it was about showing up, being present, and loving through every failure. He still turned on the nightlight every evening. He still got nervous every time he brushed Harper's hair. He still kept Lily's teddy bear by the bed, even when she forgot it. But most of all, he stayed. Because Cole Maddox, once a man who measured value by wealth, had discovered something far more priceless. He had found his daughters. And he was finally learning how to love them back. It was a quiet Saturday afternoon. Rain gently beat against the high windows of Cole Maddox's penthouse, a soft rhythm that echoed the uneasy silence between him and Harper. Lily had just taken a nap, and the apartment felt strangely quiet. Harper stood in the hallway, a small, worn cardboard box clutched tightly in her arms. "I found this," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. Cole turned from the kitchen, where he had been fumbling through making grilled cheese sandwiches, something he'd never thought he'd be doing before meeting his daughters. He dried his hands and walked slowly to her, sensing the weight of the moment more than the box. "What is it, sweetheart?" he asked gently. Harper hesitated, eyes flicking toward the floor before locking onto his. It's Mom's. Her special things. I hid it under the bed at the shelter so no one would take it." Cole knelt down, eye level with her. "May I see?" She nodded and walked to the living room, settling cross-legged on the plush rug. She placed the box carefully between them, as if afraid it might fall apart. Cole sat across from her, heart pounding in anticipation and dread. Inside were only a few items, but they seemed to carry the weight of an entire life. The first was a faded scarf, deep blue with tiny stars embroidered along the edge. Harper held it up reverently. She wore this almost every day. Even when it was hot. Said it reminded her of the sky at night, her favorite time. Cole touched it hesitantly, remembering how Natalie used to sit on his rooftop in college, wrapped in that same scarf, pointing out constellations with wild dreams in her voice. He swallowed hard, the memory punching him in the chest. Next came a small Polaroid photo, slightly bent at the edges. It showed Natalie, laughing, standing on a beach with wind-blown hair and freckles speckling her sun-kissed cheeks. She held a tiny seashell to her ear like a phone. Harper looked at the photo and smiled faintly. "That's from when we went to Lake Michigan. She told me she used to go there with someone she loved. Said it was where she felt most alive." Cole's fingers shook as he took the photo. He knew that beach. They had carved their initials into a driftwood log there the summer before he left for New York, the same summer he'd said goodbye without ever turning back. Finally, Harper pulled out the last item, a worn leather-bound journal. The edges were frayed, the pages yellowing with age. She passed it to Cole carefully, as though passing a piece of her mother's soul. "I haven't read much," Harper said. "Only the first few pages. I thought maybe we could read it together." Cole nodded, too overcome to speak. He opened to the last entry, a date circled in the top right corner, just 5 days before Natalie passed away. "Today, I saw Harper try to braid Lily's hair. She struggled with it, but never gave up. Just like me. Just like the girl I used to be when I believed love could fix anything." Cole blinked away tears as he read aloud, his voice thick with emotion. "Sometimes I still think about him. Cole Maddox. The man with the sharp mind and the softest hands. I never told him about the girls. He made his choice back then, and I made mine. But not a day goes by that I don't wonder if he would have loved them. If he would have stayed." Harper watched him closely, her small fingers curled tightly in her lap. He continued, voice barely above a murmur. I still love him. After all these years. And maybe that's foolish. But I hope one day he finds our girls and becomes the man I always believed he could be. Strong, kind, and capable of a love that goes deeper than ambition. By the time he reached the last line, tears rolled freely down Cole's cheeks. He closed the journal slowly, like it was something sacred. I didn't know, he whispered. I didn't know she still felt that way. I thought she hated me for leaving. Harper wiped her own eyes and scooted closer. She didn't. She talked about you sometimes. When Lily was asleep, she'd whisper your name like a secret. I think part of her always hoped you'd come back. Cole looked at Harper, his heart breaking open in a way it never had before. I failed her. I failed both of you. No, you didn't, Harper said softly, placing her hand over his. You're here now. And she was right. You're becoming that man. That moment, simple, quiet, yet deeply profound, became a turning point for Cole. No longer was he just the man trying to make up for lost time. He was Natalie's chosen hope. He was Harper and Lily's father. And more than anything, he was determined not to fail them again. They sat together for a long time in the golden silence of afternoon light, Natalie's scarf draped gently over the back of the couch, the journal resting on the coffee table, and the photo of the woman who had once believed in love lying between them like a bridge across the years. And though Natalie was gone, her words, her strength, and her belief in him lived on, in the girls she left behind, and in the man she always knew he could become. Cole Maddox had spent the last 2 decades building empires, real estate deals that stretched across skylines, stock portfolios that fed global headlines, boardrooms that bowed when he entered. But none of it had prepared him for bedtime stories, sticky cereal bowls, or the quiet sobs of a grieving child in the dark. After the custody hearing, Cole didn't go back to the office. Not for a day. Not for a meeting. Not even for a call. He shut it all down. A memo went out to the Maddox Holdings executive team that their CEO was taking a leave of absence. For 2 months. No explanation. No press statement. Just a note, family emergency. Cole will return when it's resolved. But it wasn't an emergency. It was a beginning. Harper was enrolled at St. Olcott's Academy within the week. The school was only 15 minutes from Cole's penthouse, nestled in the Gold Coast neighborhood. The tuition was steep, the uniform stiff, and the halls filled with children whose parents were diplomats and venture capitalists. But Harper? She walked into that first day clutching a second-hand backpack and a photo of her mother tucked into the front pocket. She didn't say much to her teacher. Just a soft, "My name's Harper Lane. I'm 9, before taking the seat by the window and staring out at the clouds for the rest of the morning. Cole watched her from the car. He didn't leave until he was sure she was okay. Lily, on the other hand, had more energy than the daycare staff expected. At only 3 years old, she was sunshine and storms, bounding across the playroom with giggles 1 minute, then curled up with her thumb in her mouth the next. The center director, Ms. Alvarez, gently told Cole that transitions were hard for toddlers. She misses her mother, she said. So do I, Cole answered quietly, his voice catching. Even though I didn't get the chance to say goodbye. By the second week, Cole realized he couldn't do it alone. His world, once defined by conference calls and quarterly reports, was now about wake-up routines, bath-time meltdowns, and night terrors that woke Lily up screaming. He didn't need a nanny to raise them for him, but he did need help. He hired June. June Evans was in her 50s, warm-voiced with soft curls and kind eyes. She didn't blink when Cole walked her through the penthouse. She didn't flinch at Harper's silence or Lily's clinginess. She simply smiled and said, "We'll build something real here. Give it time." She cooked oatmeal that Harper actually ate. She taught Lily to count using jelly beans. But more importantly, she gave Cole the space to become a father, not just in title, but in presence. Each morning, Cole poured orange juice and asked Harper what she was reading in school. Each afternoon, he took Lily to the park and let her feed ducks by the water. He showed up for family day at daycare, sat cross-legged during circle time, and colored clumsy pictures of cats with Lily's pink crayon. Some nights were still hard. Lily cried for her mom, sometimes in her sleep, sometimes while staring at the hallway shadows. Harper had nightmares, too, about being taken away, about waking up and finding Cole gone like everyone else. "I'm not going anywhere," he told her one night, kneeling beside her bed. "Ever." She didn't answer, but she reached out and took his hand. Bit by bit, they stitched together a new routine. It wasn't perfect. Cole burned toast more often than not. He once sent Harper to school in mismatched socks. But there was laughter now, quiet at first, then louder. Lily learned to dance with bare feet on the marble floors. Harper started writing poems in her journal and left one on Cole's desk. Even though the sun went away, someone left the light on. He framed it. He also removed everything in the penthouse that felt like a museum. The cold, sleek bachelor space began to soften, colorful blankets draped over couches, plastic toys scattered across the living room, family photos replacing oil paintings. One of those photos was taken on a Sunday morning. Cole in pajama pants, sleepy-eyed, with Lily climbing on his back and Harper brushing cereal from his beard while giggling uncontrollably. June snapped it on her phone, printed it, and taped it to the fridge. "That's what a home looks like," she said. Cole didn't argue. He no longer cared about quarterly returns or headlines in the business section. He cared about Harper's math quiz on Tuesday. About Lily's first drawing of their family, herself, Harper, June, and him, with a big smile. He still grieved Natalie. There were nights when he stood at the window, holding her old scarf, replaying everything he wished he had done differently. But then Harper would walk in, quietly, and say, "Can you sit with us?" Or Lily would toddle over and wrap her arms around his leg, murmuring, "Dada," in her sleepy voice. And just like that, he knew. He had missed a decade of their lives. But he wouldn't miss another moment. Not now. Not ever again. The autumn air was crisp and smelled faintly of pine and wood smoke as Cole steered the SUV down the narrow gravel path that led to the cabin by Lake Everly. The lake shimmered under the pale afternoon sun, cradled by towering evergreens and the rust-colored blaze of October leaves. It was quiet here, peaceful in a way the city never could be. And today, it felt sacred. Harper turned 10 that day. In the back seat, she stared out the window, her eyes following the trees as they blurred past. Her fingers clutched the handmade birthday card Lily had scribbled with crooked hearts and the words, "I love you sissy," in blue crayon. Lily sat beside her, asleep with her head resting on Harper's shoulder, her tiny hand still curled around the string of a balloon she refused to let go of. Cole glanced at them in the rearview mirror. His chest tightened, not with anxiety, but with a fragile hope he hadn't known he could feel. Birthdays used to be empty dates on his calendar, just another dinner with clients or some obligation for press. But this day was different. When they pulled up to the cabin, Harper's eyes widened. "Where are we?" she asked softly as Cole opened the door for her. "This used to be your mom's favorite place when she was little," he said, gently helping Lily out. "She came here every summer." Harper stepped onto the wooden porch cautiously, running her hand along the old rail. It creaked under her touch. The scent of cedar and moss rose around them. It was like stepping into a memory she didn't even know she had. Inside, the fireplace crackled with warmth. Cole had arrived the night before to decorate. A small banner that read, "Happy 10th, Harper," hung over the mantel, and a simple vanilla cake sat on the counter, topped with candles and a single pink rose, just like Natalie used to make, according to her journal. Harper's eyes welled up. "Did you do all this?" she asked, her voice barely a whisper. Cole nodded. "Your mom wrote about it in her journal. I wanted you to feel close to her." Harper threw her arms around his waist without warning. Cole froze for half a second, then wrapped his arms around her, holding her tighter than he'd ever held anything before. That evening, as dusk fell over the lake and painted the sky in lavender and gold, Cole handed Harper a small paper lantern. It was shaped like a teardrop, delicate but sturdy, with a tiny candle at its base. "This is for your mom," he said. "We'll light it and let it rise." Lily clapped her hands. "Like a flying star." Harper held the lantern reverently. "Can we write something on it?" "Anything you want." She pulled a marker from her jacket pocket and wrote slowly, in neat, careful letters, "We miss you, Mom. Thank you for loving us. We're okay now." Then, without a word, she passed the marker to Cole. He hesitated. Then, under her words, he added, "I'm sorry. I promised to protect them." They lit the lantern together. The flame flickered to life, golden and warm, casting a gentle glow on their faces. Cole knelt beside Harper and Lily, his arms around both of them as they watched the paper float from their hands into the open sky. The lantern rose slowly, wobbling at first, then catching the breeze and lifting higher, above the trees, above the water, until it looked like a tiny sun suspended in the indigo sky. Harper leaned her head on Cole's shoulder. Her voice trembled when she spoke. "She would have liked this. I think she's watching." "I think so too," Cole said, voice thick. They sat in silence, watching until the lantern disappeared behind a cloud. And then, Harper turned to face him. Her eyes, so much like Natalie's, were filled with questions too big for 10 years old. "Will we always stay together?" she asked. "Even when I'm not little anymore?" Cole cupped her face gently. "I can't change the past," he said, his throat tight, "but I can promise you this, you'll never have to beg to stay with your sister again. You won't have to be the grown-up anymore. I'm here. I'm not going anywhere." Lily looked up at them, wide-eyed and drowsy, clutching her stuffed rabbit. "Does that mean we're a real family now?" Cole kissed her forehead. "The realest kind." Harper didn't cry. Not this time. She smiled instead, soft and true. It was the kind of smile that doesn't come easily to kids who've learned how to survive instead of live. But tonight, she wasn't surviving. She was celebrating. Later, they shared cake and sang off-key songs by the fireplace. Harper wore the locket Cole had given her, one that held a photo of her mom on one side and a new picture of the three of them on the other. The night ended with Harper tucked into bed under thick blankets, Lily curled against her side. Cole sat nearby in an armchair, watching them sleep, his heart pounding in quiet awe. For the first time in his life, Cole Maddox wasn't thinking about profit margins or market shares. He was thinking about bedtime stories, scraped knees, and birthday promises. Promises he would keep. And outside, over the lake, the last light of the lantern flickered one final time before disappearing into the stars. A breeze rolled through the streets of downtown Chicago, ruffling the last of the orange leaves clinging to the city's maple trees. It was an ordinary fall afternoon for most, people hustling past cafes, buses groaning to a stop, children darting around street vendors, but for Cole Maddox, this day felt anything but ordinary. A moment he'd never imagined, never even believed he deserved, was now immortalized with the click of a stranger's camera. On the corner of West Oak and Tremont, just outside a small bakery they had discovered weeks ago, Cole was crouched on the sidewalk. His suit jacket, usually crisp and designer-starched, had a frosting smear near the pocket, courtesy of a failed sneak taste by Lily. His $5,000 loafers had crumbs stuck to the edges. And in his arms, wrapped like a koala around his neck, was 3-year-old Lily, giggling so hard she hiccuped, her chubby arms clinging to him like he was the whole world. 9-year-old Harper sat cross-legged beside them on the concrete, holding up a lopsided, homemade muffin toward Cole's mouth. "Say, ah," she teased. Cole opened wide, laughing with his head tilted back, and Harper gently shoved the muffin into his mouth. He nearly choked on a laugh, playfully pretending to fall backward under the weight of Lily and the muffin combined. Just a few feet away, a woman walking her dog paused to watch. She didn't know who the man was at first. He looked like any tired but joyful father savoring the moment with his kids. But then her eyes widened in recognition. "Is that Cole Maddox?" she whispered, snapping a photo without hesitation. The image, later posted to social media with the caption, "From please don't take her to please stay forever," exploded across the internet. It was the kind of story people didn't know they needed. But behind that candid photo was a storm of redemption, guilt, and second chances that had taken months to unfold. The road from that rainy afternoon in front of the shelter to this joyful sidewalk moment had not been easy. When Cole first brought Harper and Lily home to his high-rise penthouse, the silence was heavy. It wasn't the comfortable quiet of peace, but the stifled quiet of kids who didn't know if they were safe. Lily had cried every night the first week, waking from dreams calling for her mom. Harper had tried to be brave, but Cole would catch her in the hall late at night, staring at the skyline, clutching a frayed old photo of Natalie. He hadn't just lost years with them, he had lost the chance to comfort them through their mother's illness, to read stories when she was too weak, to promise them it wasn't their fault. And no amount of wealth could buy those years back. One night, Harper asked, "Why didn't you come find us?" The question gutted him. Cole knelt beside her, his voice low, hoarse. "I didn't know you existed. If I had known, I would have been there the second you were born." She studied him carefully, lips pursed, as if testing the truth in his eyes. Then she asked softly, "Do you think she forgave you?" He didn't know. But every morning he tried to be the man Natalie had once believed he could become. That muffin Harper had made? It wasn't just a snack, it was part of a Sunday tradition they had started together, Muffin Morning, they called it. Cole, whose idea of breakfast used to be black coffee in the back seat of a town car, had learned to crack eggs one-handed, to sift flour without making a cloud, and to clean batter off Lily's curls when she insisted on stirring, all by herself. He had traded boardrooms for ballet recitals, late-night emails for story time, and business dinners for family spaghetti nights where everyone wore aprons and made a glorious mess. And though he still ran an empire, his world now revolved around Harper's questions and Lily's squeals of delight when he did the cupcake dance. Still, there were moments the grief caught him off guard, like the first time he found Harper reading Natalie's old journal, tears rolling silently down her cheeks. She had underlined a passage that read, "I don't know if Cole will ever come back, but if he does, I hope he meets the girls with a heart full of love, not regret." That line had nearly broken him. But over time, the healing came in small, sacred fragments. It came the first time Lily ran to him after scraping her knee instead of hiding it like she used to. It came when Harper asked him to help with her science project, trusting him not just as a provider but as someone who might have answers. It came when the nanny said she thought he'd been a dad forever. It came when Cole found himself watching old videos of Natalie late at night, not to punish himself, but to remember the love that once was, and how it had birthed the two brightest stars of his life. And it came when he realized something simple yet staggering: this wasn't just a redemption arc. This was fatherhood. The morning of the viral photo, Cole had suggested they skip the limo and take a walk to the bakery. "Let's get muffins like normal people," he joked, ruffling Harper's hair. They had walked hand in hand, Harper holding Lily's other hand as she skipped in her polka-dot rain boots. At the bakery, Harper insisted she could pick the best muffin for him. "You have to trust my baking intuition," she declared, eyes twinkling. They bought 3 muffins, banana walnut for Cole, chocolate chip for Harper, and blueberry for Lily. But Harper had begged the baker for some extra cupcake liners so she could make her own version at home and bring it next time. The muffin she fed him on the sidewalk wasn't perfect, it was misshapen and half-burned on one side, but when he took a bite, he exaggerated a chef's kiss and declared it the best thing he'd eaten in his life. Lily clapped. Harper beamed. And that's when the camera clicked. That snapshot froze more than a moment. It captured a man who had once believed he'd missed his only shot at love and family, now drenched in both. When Cole saw the photo later that evening, already flooding news feeds and headlines like "Billionaire's Second Chance" and "Heir to a Hug," he sat down on the edge of the bed, Lily fast asleep against his chest, Harper curled up with her stuffed rabbit beside them. He didn't cry, but something deep inside him finally let go. The grief didn't vanish, but the shame lost its grip. In its place was a quiet, unwavering vow. They would never feel abandoned again. He would never let them beg to stay. And he would spend every day proving love was not just a word whispered in desperation, but a promise lived out loud. From "please don't take her" to "please stay forever," the transformation wasn't just public, it was personal. And it was just the beginning. We'd love to hear what you think. Drop a comment below and rate this story from 10 to 100. Tell us where you're watching from too. Make sure to hit that subscribe button and turn on the notification bell so you never miss a story. And if this touched your heart, check out more uplifting videos by clicking on the end screen now.